So good morning, everyone. Well, good afternoon, or both, right? We're kind of on the cusp of the morning and afternoon. My name is David Garza. I'm the president and CEO here. But today, like most days of my job, I show up to serve our legacy, and I show up to serve our mission. And one of the most important things that factors into the way that we approach the work is that we embrace our history to shine a light on our future. There is so much genetic material in Henry Street's DNA that has proven to be timeless. The way that we approach the work, the values that drive the work, the philosophical underpinnings to the work, but also the way that we convene around issues to kind of feed this reflex that we have to listen to our community and to stakeholders, to then reflect on what that's telling us and what that's being shared with us, and then how we act on that. One of the elements of Henry Street's history that has proven timeless, timelessly effective, timelessly valuable, and timelessly important is our embrace of the arts. And so today, we're going to take a moment, and we're convening like this, and I want to thank Katie, and I want to thank Barbara, and I want to thank the marketing and comms team. Because the theme of these events is to come to the table. Now, normally, those of you who come in here frequently know that normally there are some very large tables that occupy this room. And there are tables that have been in this room for 130 years.
Right.
And many, many, many people have come around that table to talk about the issues of our time, the issues that affect our community, the issues that matter to us, and the issues that warrant listening, discussing, reflecting, and taking action upon. And as I began to say, the arts is something that Henry Street has always embraced. And we recognize the arts and its importance to the arts, the importance of the arts to any community and every community as kind of like, the ecosystem of any community. The arts is the oxygen. It means that whether you're an audience member, whether you're an artist, whether you're a supporter, whether you're an advocate, whether you're a curator, a patron, it gives you an opportunity for self-expression, and it gives you an opportunity to kind of participate in that kind of breath of life of a community. That's what the arts represents. We're extraordinarily proud of our history of the arts. We're extraordinarily proud that we come to the table when issues matter to us. This is the first of a 4-part series, because one of the things that we heard from all of you, our team members and our community members, that Henry Street should host and create more opportunities to come to the table, more opportunities to connect as an organization, as a community. So today is the first event of this kind of our Come to the Table series. We're going to have 4 more. They feature really, really notable stakeholders, some of our very own. Today, and when I get to introduce today's Come to the Table participants, I'll do so. But in the future, to get an opportunity to hear lifelong Henry Streeters, like our VP of Community Engagement and Integration, Debbie Cox, is going to be part of one. Yes. Because people that have been part of Henry Street's activity for such a long time have a unique perspective. And that brings us to today. Today, our Come to the Table topic is the arts. And we have, as our featured guest and our honored guest, the legendary Woodie King Jr., who's the founder of the New Federal Theater, which was established in 1970, and Henry Street was one of its first homes. And Woodie and his work, and I'm sure he'll tell you about it, has been very intentional, very deliberate, and very specific to highlight works and writers of color and women. And Woodie today will be in conversation with our very own Ali Rosa-Salas. So we have a legendary part of our past connected with a legendary part of our present, to hopefully talk about issues that are important to all of us and shine a really important light on our future. And so today, I give you our first Come to the Table, and we kick it off by inviting Woodie and Ali to engage in a really meaningful conversation. So thank you all for coming. Woodie, thank you so much for coming to be with us today. Ali, thank you so much for leading another first at Henry Street, our first Come to the Table. And thank all of you, Henry Street team members and guests, for being here with us today. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's so nice to see such a full house for our first Come to the Table. I'm super excited about this platform and honored to be in conversation with Mr. King. So thank you for being here, and thank you all for sharing space with us this afternoon. I think David gave just a peek into Mr. King's incredibly illustrious career, rooted at this settlement and ever expansive, but I will endeavor to very shortly just give us all like a grounding context as to who he is and what the New Federal Theater is, and then we'll get into some conversation. And then I would love for you all to be thinking about the questions that you have, because we'll open it up to the audience at the end of that. Sounds good? Great. So as David shared, most folks know me, but I'm Ali. I'm the VP of Visual Performing Arts at Henry Street, and the proud steward of the Abrons Art Center in collaboration with our incredible team. Shout out to so many Abrons people who are here. Yay! So the New Federal Theater, so much to say, but was founded in 1970 with its roots at Henry Street Settlement in a direct response to the lack of representation of Black artists, artists of color, and women in theater in New York and in the United States. The vision, Mr. King's vision of the organization, was to create a space where diverse communities and their experiences were reflected on stage. And I can say that that's deeply connected to the work that we're continuing at the Art Center. As the director of the New Federal Theater, Mr. King has produced over 400 plays. Pregnant pause for that one. By some of the most prolific writers of theater, including Amiri Baraka's recent Killing, and Ntozake Shange's For Color Girls, among so many others. And it's such an honor for Henry Street also to be braided into the history that you stewarded. The New Federal Theater is still operating strong, still making an important impact, has moved uptown, and super grateful for the opportunity to have you all join us downtown to have a conversation about the roots of the organization. So all that being said, that is just like the first sentence of the first chapter of a long, illustrious history of the New Federal Theater that's continuing. And I hope in this conversation today, we can all learn more about the foundational importance of NFT for the settlement, for New York City arts and culture, and how we're just inextricably linked to all that you've built. So let's get started. Yay! So my first question for you is just to kind of like lay some groundwork and context for how New Federal Theater started. So we had a pre-panel chat, a phone call, and you shared with me that you came to Henry Street after working for Mobilization for Youth, which was a community-based organization on the Lower East Side, and you started there in the mid-'60s. I'm just curious to learn a bit more about your work in youth development, and if you could paint a bit of a picture about what the LES was like at that time when you were starting your career as in the arts and cultural sector, and how did that context inspire you to begin New Federal Theater?
What did I do?
Let's see. I think.
Okay. I didn't start my career at Mobilization. I started in Detroit, and I made a note and talked to Liz not to talk too much about Detroit because it would go on too long. I arrived in New York in 1964, 65, and Robert Hooks, the actor, introduced me to Marilyn Bibb, who introduced me to Bertram Beck. And Bertram Beck really liked me, okay? Now, at that time, there was something called HARU Act. That was in Harlem. There was something called Mobilization for Youth. That was on the Lower East Side. There was something called Bedford-Stuyvesant Redevelopment Corporation. That was in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. Okay, and of those three organizations, they were recruiting. Okay, and the federal government had given each one a great deal of money to begin their organizations, to begin these institutions. And Mobilization for Youth on the Lower East Side had Bertram Beck as the executive director. He hired me. And at Mobilization for Youth, I had a training program for young artists. These artists were 16 to 21. And in the 4.5 years that I was there, we had a film program, a theater program, a dance program, arts program, and a dance program. And these were run by very well New Yorkers that I were able to find. Some was my friend from my short stay in New York at that time. Okay, the dance program were able to apprentice at the then start-up Alvin Ailey Company. And therefore we got plenty of press. The film program, Roberta Hodes, Kent McKinney, I think they did 2 or 3 films. And these films were suddenly recognized by Hemisphere 68. I think one other festival. And we went there and we got prizes. We won prizes, etc. And that brought another great amount of attention to the program. Not, if I know most of you were born then, but back in that time, in 65 to 70, the New York Times, New York Post, Daily News, Amsterdam News, Black Radio did not have a lot of things to write about. And they had maybe 3 or 4 writers. Mm-hmm. So they could come and see what you did and it would appear, and people would appear. Now you don't have that. You cannot, if you do a play here, maybe you'll get a critic. Mm-hmm. Maybe you will find an audience. But we found audience back then through writing articles. There were many great articles on me and on the New Federal Theater in the New York Times. Okay. Henry Street asked me to come here when Bertram Beck came here. Okay. And so the Arts Center had not been developed. My office was upstairs in the Playhouse. And I was there for maybe 8 months or a year, and Herb Abrams and Richard Abrams of the Abrams family built the Abrams Art Center. That's what it was called. And then when it was finally built, I could move my office down to the Abrams Art Center. And so for the next 25 years, that's where I was. I had use of the Playhouse and the experimental theater. Many, many artists who became famous through working at these places had never been seen before, and they were very good. Some even had graduated college, NYU, Yale, Howard University, and that's how that all came about. Dick Anthony Williams came from Los Angeles. I was traveling all over the country looking for people because I had another job because of these articles, working for the Rockefeller Foundation. And I saw this play and asked the actors, if you ever come to New York, come and see me. And Dick Anthony Williams came to see me, Kirk Kirksey came to see me, and we did a play. I think it was Malcolm X, and another one, Zora Neale Hurston, another one called Misjudgment, and Charlie Can't Win No Wars on the Ground, and the critics gave it great reviews. Again, it was a great, great time, and I became friends with Joseph Papp. I don't know if many of you remember that. Joseph Papp ran the public theater until he passed. And I did 6 plays with Joseph Papp. And the then director, Bertram Beck, became friends with Joseph Papp. And so that just solidified what we were trying to do. And my associate was a woman named Mamie Mitchum from Atlanta. My secretary assistant was Carol Caprell, her sister. Brilliant. These was brilliant women. I mean, that's woo. And when they left and moved on, you know, you had to find new ways to operate. And at Mobilization for Youth, I just want to mention their names because some of them died, some of them moved on. Cliff Frazier, Jay Kramer, Jay Milder, Garrett Morris, Irvin Vincent, Kent McKinney, who I mentioned earlier. At Henry Street, the Art Center was a unique and different place than any place I had been in. And while upstairs there, I might have done 1 play or 2 plays in the Playhouse. But I began to read about this place, the Neighborhood Playhouse. And it was called the Neighborhood Playhouse back in the day. And the Neighborhood Playhouse was integrally involved in the WPA's Federal Theater Project. And the Federal Theater Project drew my attention. And I said, wow. They worked from 1935 to 1939. And so why don't I incorporate a company called the New Federal? So I came to, and Bertram Beck was like David Garza's sister today. I went to Bertram and told him what I wanted to do. He says, well, I can't help you, but go ahead and try because I'm running this settlement. Okay. And his immediate assistants was a guy named Danny Cronenfeld. And it was, I think it was down the street from here, 301 Henry Street. So that's what I did. And let's see what else I have here.
May I ask just a follow-up around why the settlement? Because I hear in you sort of it's telling about the origin story of your work in Mobilization for Youth, getting connected to the community, and I'm really curious to hear, in addition to your context as an artist and already being embedded in the neighborhood through your work at Mobilization for Youth, why was Henry Street, aside, in addition to being asked, like why did you trust Henry Street to sort of incubate this important new idea for starting a new federal theater?
I was here through the help and guidance of Bertram Beck, the guy who brought me here. And while here, I didn't just sit behind a desk. I read probably every book in the library. And I came on the Federal Theater Project, and that interested me. And the federal government actually paid artists to work from 1935 to 1939 when, of course, they were accused of communism, and it disbanded. So, so many of those artists had come into Detroit to say hello to the artists in Detroit. People like Powell Lindsay, people like Margaret Danner. You wouldn't have no reason to remember them other than they were poets, etc. Langston Hughes, the late Langston Hughes. Theodore Ward, who wrote Our Land, became a big hit on the Federal Theater circuit. And it had different units, but they had one unit called the Negro Unit. And that interested me.
That's really interesting because over the last 2 years, the Art Center hosted artists through a state-funded project for employing artists to create new work and also be in our team. So I was really inspired to hear about the foundations of the new Federal Theater as you were inspired by learning about the Federal Theater Project and to see how there's echoes of that inspiration that still reverberate in what it is that we're doing today, though the landscape and for the funding of arts and culture feels very different, as we were just talking about, which we'll definitely get into more. But I wanted to ask you a bit about all of the works that you developed over the course of the tenure of New Federal Theater's life at Henry Street Settlement. I'm super curious to hear about what of those productions left a particularly important impact on you as a director and a theater maker, and why, if you could choose a few from that time period.
Well, you shortchanged me because I was at Henry Street 25 years.
Did I? Oh, I will. That was not my intention. If I did that, that was.
Henry Street was good to me. I was able to bring my family from Detroit here, buy a house in Harlem, give me exposure that I would never have gotten anywhere else, even though 3 or 4 honorary doctorates, and even though I knew the arts, but I didn't have the exposure. I didn't have. Henry Street can shed light on your careers if you want light shedded on your career. Okay. Now, any organization that can produce an artist, I don't know where she lived, but Lillian Wall, and I did get to know her, Helen Hall in her last days in this room, in her room. Leona Gold, who's the treasurer, who didn't let me spend too much money. And anyway, the relationship between Henry Street Arts for Living and this building here was inextricably connected. So I know Bertram Beck followed Lillian Wall. Danny Cronenfeld, I don't know too much about him. But the Abrams Arts Center, Richard Abrams, one of the Abrams brothers, who named it, and I became good friends. I produced 4 of his works. He was a playwright. I didn't know that. I was in Boston, and I saw on a bookshelf a stack of books, Richard Abrams. I said, when you write plays, after a while, you just put them on a table, and they may sell, they may not. And I read it, and I called him, I said, are you the Richard Abrams from Henry Street said yes. And we became associates. And 4 of his plays later, he passed on. Let's see, what else? But the plays that influenced me most in those 25 years, I had asked Liz, for years I talked about 10 plays, but last night I could only come up with maybe 5 or 6. And those 6 plays were Black Girl, which was made into a film, directed by Ossie Davis, The Taking of Miss Janie, which was moved from New Federal to the New York Shakespeare Festival, The Dance in the Railroad by David Henry Hwang, who has a play on Broadway now, Yellow Man. What the Wine Sellers Buy by my fellow Detroiter, and For Color Girls. These plays enter for color girls who considered suicide when the rainbow is enough. It moved from here to the public. It took me to Australia, took me to London. Liz was in the Australian production, right? Okay. You didn't go, you go to London? London, okay. Mondongo by Ray Ramirez. And I think those productions these 6 influenced me the most. It's really 4 more, and I can't think of them. I'm sorry, I just can't. I can't think of it.
And were these? Okay, we're back on. I'm curious about these productions, just to kind of get a window into, just like my first question, what was the Lower East Side like when you were beginning your work here? I'm curious to bring to life like those works in the context of what was then called the Arts for Living Center. Where were they performed? It sounds like it was in the experimental theater or the Playhouse, and would love to just get a window into why those plays particularly were so memorable in your long, illustrious career.
So many of them were produced in the experimental theater and the Playhouse. And when they were full, the Henry Street treasurer would call me back. We would get together and in this dining room, and she would say, "We are busy with meetings, etc., over there, and you will have to rent a space." And space was so easy to rent. It was easy to rent back then, not like now. And so that was how that began. And these plays brought in money, I don't know how much, to Henry Street. And so for the 10 years, when money came in, that meant you weren't, I didn't put a burden on Henry Street.
Thank you for that. I'm curious, kind of like looking in the past in order to reconsider our present. I'm super interested to hear, just as you take a look at the ways that the New Federal Theater has adapted and transformed. What is the theater landscape like in New York City since you began the company? What have you observed have been the transformations? I think we've been alluding to the fact that things are different, and given the mission of what it is that you've built, which is to support artists of color, Black artists, women artists in theater, as its core mission, what change have you observed, and what more change do you think we should be seeing today?
Well, I I would like to see the theaters funded. I would like to see the theaters have space. Black and Puerto Rican theaters don't have any space for rehearsals or productions, and the cost of renting is unbelievably high. And back in the day, you could go to a church in the years after Henry Street. I could go to a church, St. Augustine, Greenwich Mews, Riverside Church, and you can get space to do a play. I would like to see more of that, and you can't see more of that because that doesn't exist.
And in the context of the mission of the New Federal Theater, do you in your observations and experience, have you observed a change in representation or the ways in which the theater world in New York City and abroad has integrated diverse storytelling in their seasons, in their programming?
Yes and no. I think if you come out of Yale now, if you come out of any major university, NYU, you can get work if you're good. Back then, you could be good and couldn't get work.
And I would love to hear, there's a lot there. There's a lot there that I'm hoping that our audience, we can speak more to that, because I think the legacy of what the New Federal Theater continues to build, and its relationship to Henry Street, I think speaks to what I know is a goal of mine professionally, and the reasons why I feel so aligned to the Art Center and to Henry Street is to understanding that we cannot be creating art in a vacuum. It exists in context, it exists in community, it exists especially in New York City in a hyper-local context, and there's no way to separate activism and calls for more substantive social change as it relates to the life of artists and the work that they produce. So I think that, speaking to and learning more about the history of the New Federal Theater, it's really heartening. It makes me feel strong that we're part of this illustrious history, that this is, I think what David, you were saying, it's in our genetic material, it's in the genetic material of the settlement, and I definitely think reflective in what guides the curatorial vision of the Art Center today. So it's both heartening and like, we have to be up for the challenge to really heed the call of what it is that you were building and are building with the New Federal Theater, and how cultural workers today can continue to be attentive to the ways in which we all need to be concerned with the social, political issues that are impacting life in the city. So I thank you for doing that work, and for laying the groundwork for the ways in which we approach that in context of the Art Center today. So thank you.
Thank you.
I have a million more questions, but I'm also super excited to hear about what the folks in the room have to say, the questions you all may have about the New Federal Theater for Mr. King. So I would love to have this be an opportunity to open up the floor and have us all engage. But before we do that, thank you so much. I just want to give you a round of applause, and thank you for being in conversation with me. But yes, questions, and I would imagine questions would have to be amplified, so I could pass around the mic that I'm holding for questions. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for opening the floor, David.
Woody, thank you again for joining us. We're grateful,
you.
We're honored. You spoke a lot about representation on the stage in terms of like the actors, the directors, particularly black artists, people of color, women. Could you shed some light on who was in the audience at the time? Because one of the things that we really focus on at Abrons is access. Access for artists, of course, but then access for audiences and people kind of like participating in the art. Who was in the audience at the Playhouse or the Experimental when you were putting on these plays? And how did you draw individuals from the community to create new experiences? Was there free access? Could you just talk more about who was in the audience and how you got them there?
Okay. First of all, if you have a hit play and you get that hit through bringing people in at, I think it was something like $15 or $20 per ticket. And the word get around, that's what your ticket prices are. They are low. The next one, you're gonna have more audience. The next one, you're gonna have more audience. And by the time you are 10, 15 years old, you're gonna be packed. Now we did David Henry Hwang, who's an Asian actor, playwright. He did a play called The Dance and the Railroad. That was the play I mentioned. Mm-hmm. And The Dance and the Railroad had John Lone. And he got a great New York Times review. Okay? Now he's being produced, David Henry Hwang is being produced on Broadway. I think Yellowface. He did it originally on Broadway with a white actor. Now he's doing it with an Asian actor. And they're sold out. So in that time, I would want to think that I helped build that audience.
Didn't you, when you began, wasn't it free?
Yes.
You didn't charge.
Right.
So you opened it up to the community.
For 5 years,
For
free.
5 years it was free, so your audience was who was coming for free? This whole neighborhood, right?
Yes, this whole neighborhood. Henry Street had a great audience, had people all around.
So there were blacks and Puerto Ricans who never had a chance to see the theater.
I am a witness to attending these plays that you put on at the time it was called the Art for Living Center. I don't know if you guys knew that.
Yeah.
But at one time it was called the Art for Living Center. And I'm a witness to bringing my grandmother, my aunts to these plays. I was able to afford those tickets, and it was nothing like it. It was like you were on Broadway. You brought something special to the Lower East Side, and I want to thank you for that.
One question. Oh, amazing. Thank you. Oh, up there? Oh, sure.
All right, I was just gonna say, you should definitely introduce yourself to everybody here and whoever's on live stream, because you were definitely dropping gems and wanted to have it on the mic as well. But I wanted to ask a question just about running a community, because it is a unique kind of space that is, high level of artistic caliber, New York Times reviewed, world-class talent. But then you're also working in a community center, right? It isn't Broadway. It's not a for-profit industry. It isn't connected to big industry. It's not connected to, large media or anything like that. So what was it like kind of living in both of those worlds? I think, I'm part of the team at Abrons Art Center, the director of education, and I think we're really trying to figure out how going forward we really can bring in, walk in both of these worlds. And so just being here and hearing from your experience, I would love to hear some more reflections about working with, high-class talent like Denzel Washington, Chadwick Boseman, top-tier talent, right? While at the same time staying very connected to the community, how you're able to kind of balance those things.
Okay, well, these, if you have Trezana Beverly, who won a Tony Award for Color Girls, that came out of the community. she had studied in 5 or 6 different places. She wasn't getting any roles. We did that play, and you could come and see her for free here at Henry Street. Now, when it moved to the public, it was less than the public's normal charges. And it ran for 7, 8 months. So, Dick Anthony Williams, or Felicia Rashad, or Liz Van Dyke appeared in a play. A lot of plays and directed plays. And it was these artists you could see on your television and say, wow, I saw him at Henry Street yesterday. And that was a unique thing, because if you acted in New York, I was going to fine you. And then it got to be, I act in New York, I'm going to fine New Federal Theater. So, to me at that time, it didn't seem unique, but looking back on it, it was very, very, very different. It was a different time. There was the Black Arts Movement. There was the Black Power Movement. There was these movements happening in New York that everyone became aware of. The riots in New York, everyone became aware of those. And we were producing right through all of that.
New Federal Theater was founded because there was no place for us in the American theater. And Woodie King created that space for Black, BIPOC artists of color and women, when there was no other place, when the white spaces were not doing our work, telling our stories. So we went to New Federal Theater, where we could play Zora Neale Hurston. Felicia Ayres Allen, before she became known, played Zora Neale Hurston. Denzel Washington, before he was known, played Malcolm X. Here, over there, across the street. And there were lines around the block. There were lines from Pitt all the way down, trying to get in. They weren't known yet. They were building a body of work, and New Federal Theater allowed you to build that body of work. That is why Samuel L. Jackson, LaTanya Richardson, Debbie Allen, Chadwick Boseman coming from Chicago, Woody going to see him in a play. It didn't start there. You don't have to travel 2 worlds. You have to be true to one, your art. And your art and that commitment to it will take you where you need to go, or where you gonna go. Yeah?
And this is Elizabeth Van Dyke, who runs the New Federal Theater now. Thank you so much for speaking as well.
Do we have time for one more question?
Yeah, I think so. Did you have a question?
Thank you for introducing yourself, Elizabeth. I feel like this is a question maybe for you and for Woody. I'm thinking about shows like Yellowface, and I'm curious about work being produced and performed today, whether it's things that you and the New Federal Theater are involved in or not, that excites you as a continuation of your legacy, either in your hands or the extent to which you have handed off your legacy to now many other people who are inspired by you.
Well, as I told you, David Henry Hwang is still writing. The Dance in the Railroad was his first play done here at Henry Street, Arts for Living Center. And Yellowface is a brilliant play. That excites me. Done by Asian American actors. That's great, man. You see, starring this great Asian American actor. They would not have thought of asking $89 to $99 for a ticket for him when we started. But we said he's going to be great. He is going to be great at Henry Street. I don't know how to say this, but Henry Street, you know, I was coming down here and I was saying, Liz, I used to drive down here. And we had all these people coming here. They didn't talk about any difficulties getting here. Okay? And we had people, Deborah Green and all these people lived in the neighborhood. There's a place for them. Okay? But you got to train them. You got to have an acting teacher who works with them. And working with him or her, they find that minority movement, that minority way of talking, that way of walking. And you sitting out there say, wow, he walks just like my cousin. He walks just like my uncle. It's not like strange. Mm-hmm. He brings something. Okay. Now, the way we said to integrate minorities and women, the way I said that was the woman we hired to do Lillian Wall. It was like an amazing amount of research. She passed, by the way. Amount of research she did to do that play. And there was so much research on them. Because what happens is, when someone like Lillian Wall comes along, we talk about white people now, right? Now, there's research on them. Helen Hall, woman in Chicago, Jane Addams. They are not unlike the woman who ran Franklin Settlement in Detroit. It's a white Jewish woman. She could stand and talk to you, and you knew she understood your grief, but Bertram Beck understood the grief and will let you produce a play that included that grief. That has changed now. So that's all I want to say on that. Did I answer that?
No, that's beautiful.
Huh?
Yes. Beautifully, she said.
When you say that has changed, what about it has changed? Like, you don't think that there's plays being produced with that grief in it?
I don't know if you worked on Broadway, but if you stand and talk to a white director, people to get a play on Broadway, you may need 15, 20, 25 people to put on, to raise $7 million. They don't want you to do it. They want you to do what they want done.
I just wanted to get into specifics.
Okay.
So I heard you say that, I was like,
Yeah.
cover that.
Yeah. And you said, no, brother, that's not the way you shoot pool.
Right.
That's what we want it done, though. And And then the audience comes and says, "Oh, that's not the way you shoot poop."
We all see it, whether it be media, it doesn't matter what kind of media you consume, we all see it. You know, a lot of things are not made with real stories embedded in, like, a lot of the time it's all artificial. It's not,
You're right.
because there's an agenda.
Yeah. You see it, you say,
You can feel it.
yeah.
It's a feeling, it's not a single
It's
thing.
something not working here.
Do we have time for one more question, and then we can? Then there's such a unique opportunity. I want to make sure we get all the questions in. Since you're in the back, yeah.
Oh, I can talk. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, what would you say is the secret sauce to really merging the community and the arts, so that we just expose, the community to it a bit more, and just really get the new generation excited about the arts in a way that maybe things are shifting and changing?
Well, the politics of it has changed. I can't tell you that. All I know is like, we're going through it right now. We're going through it right now politically. A guy can actually look in your face and lie to you and say, "I'm going to send you $1.5 million. And if you wait for it, you're in trouble." Okay, but the arts has not changed. Liz is producing a play called The Wash that she was talking about. I mean, in 1881, there was a strike of black people because these women were getting 40 cents a week, and the white Southerners in Atlanta, Georgia, didn't have anything to exchange with them, wasn't going to pay them. So little by little, they organized, and within a year, they had 3,000 women across Georgia. Those are the kind of plays that I love.
Thank you all so much again for your brilliant questions. Thank you so much, Mr. King. And also, Liz, I wanted to give you the opportunity to, as the director of the New Federal Theater now, to share how can the Henry Street community be tapped into what's happening now. I learned a little bit about Wash, the new play, but not to put you on the spot, but would love to stay connected. If you could speak a little bit to what's next for the New Federal Theater. You could find her afterwards to share what's next with the New Federal Theater, but there is a lot of exciting work that the company continues to do, and I think this is a really important point of departure for us to reignite that connection. And even as they're uptown now, we can still remain connected because we all are part of this family. So just want to thank you again, Mr. King. Thank you to everyone for being here, to Katie, to Barbara for organizing this opportunity for us to learn more about our history. I'm looking forward to what's to come. So have a great rest of your day.